I have an aunt. She's an absolute con artist, and she's already set my dad up to take a fall for a fraudulent scam that she had going on for quite some time. Well, luckily, my father had a great lawyer, and he never really got in trouble for that. But at the same time, this aunt is back in my life, and she's starting problems all over again. And I'm gonna tell you right now, you guys will not believe what she's done this time. I'm 17 and female, and I knew the moment a well-dressed Samantha, 38, my aunt, walked into our home that there was something fishy about her behavior and manner. I remember calculating each word that she uttered and each expression that she made, even though I had little idea why I was doing it. Sure, you can say sometimes some people are such big red flags that ignoring them is absolutely impossible. But even so, I had little idea about her past with my parents. I did not help that my parents were very composed when they talked to her, even though she repeated several times that it had been a while since they met. I took my parents' mild response to her with interest, and I knew something had happened and it affected how they viewed and treated her. Samantha's claim that she had changed as a person piqued my curiosity. While she tried to befriend my little sister Emily, I dug into her past. Do you wonder what I found? Well, my aunt had an interesting past. What is extraordinary, though, is that she was a character. She's always been a character, but she was wilder in her younger years. Or maybe she is now. I'll have to wait to find that out, and how, you're asking? I'll give you an understanding of my family and what I know about my aunt's relationship with my dad and mom. That'll help us clarify some things, and maybe it'll also help you discover something that I might have missed. So, here it goes. I'm Lily. I'm 17, and I'm in my last year of high school. We've lived in this village for quite some time because there are not many residents and we know each other quite well. Sure, we don't know what happened behind closed doors, but we have enough ideas about each other. It helps in maintaining peace in our village. Because everything about this town is so mild, you do not expect a lot of movements and events here. That also means the frequency of visitors and even distant relatives is very low. They come and they leave, and there's nothing much that we do here. When you walk around the corners of the streets, you'll find inns with several unused rooms. It's important to consider because when Samantha shows up in this city, she and her friends will occupy many of these rooms. The nearest inn to our home is only 5 minutes away. That is where Samantha will live with her friends and acquaintances. Let's return to where we were before I got distracted by the present. I hope you don't mind that little slip. I've been affected by the issues of my present so much that I often lose my chain of thought. I don't remember the details of when we moved here, but I know about the reason we did. It's a little more complicated than the town I introduced to you. You see, 7 years ago, when I was Emily's age, my father, Arthur, was nearly imprisoned. I'm unsure what the reason was for, and my mom, April, refused to explain it. Perhaps that is her way of protecting her children from the past that hurt them. I'm unsure, but I have found several truths. I found that to be the closest possible explanation, and what I knew then was that he was charged with fraud. In all the years I've known my dad, I've never found a lick of deceit in him. So even before I knew that he had not been in jail, I knew he was innocent. Though he was proven innocent, people around him did not accept him as such. With time, he lost his job and could not find another. Because he still had a family to support, he rented one in the city and shifted to this area. We've been living here ever since. I don't really know all the details of this case until Samantha arrived. Even then, this discovery was coincidental, and I overheard them talking about it late at night. It was the most curious discovery for me because yes, I knew Dad was framed for a crime that he did not commit, but I had not imagined my aunt too have played a role in it. After that, I kept my distance from her, and I've already told you I had little faith in her when she arrived. But after learning of her involvement, I grew a little more distant, because we never got close, so my cautious behavior must not have seemed weird to her. What I was more stern about, though, was Emily's closeness with my aunt. Whenever I saw them together, I tried to push them apart, and I did not want Emily to grow emotionally dependent on Samantha. I spelled disaster. But because it, could not shake off questioning about my parents' past, I kept my attention on it. I stalked my aunt several times a week, and I questioned my mother about the reasons more than I could count. I did not find much through my stalking, and my mom hesitated in informing me about the case too. I'm unsure why she did that, but I went ahead and contacted my grandparents. I had absolutely no other way. Just like my mom, they too hesitated, and sometimes they asked how I even got to know about this, and each time I answered the same: I heard my parents discussing it a long time ago. Simple as that. Nothing too fishy about it, right? Did I get this wrong, guys? I found the truth. My suspicions of my aunt's self were correct for the most part, except that they were wilder than my imagination. Samantha had been a promising person in her younger years, and she scored well in high school and seemed to do the same in college. After the third semester, her scores started falling and flunked several subjects. She had failed in several subjects, so she could not take the load off by the time that she was in her sixth semester. Before people could put some sense into her, she had already stopped focusing on studies. She failed all subjects in her sixth semester. To get her parents off her back, she claimed her interest in business and was willing to risk it all, just to make something out of it. My grandparents were skeptical, but allowed her to do her thing. When she showed the most enthusiasm, she soon picked something up too. My grandparents, they simply did not know what it was until cops knocked on their doors. Standing by a handcuffed Samantha, apparently, when the business ideas seemed too daunting and risky, she and her friends group befriended local thugs and drug dealers. Instead of persevering, she gave in to the pressure. By 22, she had become a known face among people who dealt with drugs under the table. For some time, she remained out of reach of cops. Eventually, she got caught, though. What I consider worse is the fact that she got caught when she had been dealing with a teenager. Honestly, I believe she lost her morals and sense of self long ago, but that was not an end to her ridiculous decision. Because she had grown older and had little scope for a better life. She fell more into the shady side of businesses. You know, the people who were nice during the day but turn into something opposite during the nighttime. You can consider her something like that, except nothing about this transformation was alluring. She was getting involved with the wrong people, and my dad was to pay for that. With the help of the same group of people, she devised a scheme, and her targets were older people, especially those who lived alone. Sometimes she would go further and target younger people who looked financially weak. If you were a lonely individual and came into their target, then only your God and awareness could save you. My grandparents do not know much about how she did it, but they knew my aunt and her friends would use voice modulations as per their needs, call their targets, talk to them for a while, and then commit their types of fraud. Usually it involves some sort of internet phishing and computer pop-ups. My aunt was an expert at this, and to stay away from the law's reach, they roamed. Sometimes their victims were foreigners, and for years they kept it up until the cops caught them. Afraid that they would eventually find her, she gave an anonymous tip. Guess who was thrown under the bus? My dad. She had no one else to frame this on, and she firmly believed my father would give her, as he always did, just forgive her. So she let it be. Cops found Dad and would have been incarcerated if Grandpa's lawyer was not a damn good one. None of them knew about Samantha's involvement in this. You already know what happened with my dad. Before he left, though, Samantha accidentally blurted out her involvement. It did little to improve her relationship with her family, and before we left the city, my dad had to cut off ties with her. My grandparents, for their part, had kicked them out of their lives too. I'm unsure how much that helped the situation. Samantha was still not caught. She promised them that she had dropped all such activities, but I assumed that was a lie, because she did not really beg her parents or my dad for a place to stay. They fought and she moved away. After that, none of them heard from her until now. That is where my grandparents' story ended, guys. This is all I know now. What this helped me understand, though, is that there's no way Samantha has returned with good intentions. The chance of that are less, but now she has returned and stays at the inn I informed you about earlier and frequently visit with my parents. Sometimes when I come back from school, she's there. Sometimes when I go to school, she's there, and she's always there, even if my parents do not welcome her. Whenever she's over, she has tales to talk about. Sometimes this and sometimes that, and eventually, though, she comes around to a single thing. She's changed, and she needs someone to help her through this transformation. My parents have never looked like they were to be a part of this, so I'm glad about one thing. However, when she's absent, then her friends come over or roam around our home throughout the day. I'm unsure what she wants now, but I know the intentions are not good. 7 weeks ago, she knocked on our door. It had not even taken me 5 minutes to take a dislike to her. You get the idea I'm going with this, guys, but let this go. I'm not going to let it go. I have every reason to be suspicious. I've even vowed to act on it. That is why I've started stalking them. Most of the time it's fruitless, and sometimes, however, I heard snippets of a conversation between her and her friends. Each time I got the hint that they indeed are up to something. Is it another scheme? I don't know, but I should bring it to my parents. Attention, maybe. Should I not? Maybe. What do you guys suggest I do? If you understand the issues or have dealt with someone like my aunt, please inform me of ways to deal with my aunt too. I'll be most grateful. I'll return with an update, and until then, guys, be careful who call you and pick up and what emails you click through, because it could be a scam. Update number 1. Well, she says that we were up to something, right? Most of you agreed with me, and before going to my parents about the issue, I decided to spend a little more time understanding Samantha. I'm sure my parents would be upset because I've spent my past few weeks studying less and stalking more. But this is urgent. Samantha has started worming into our lives, and it seems adamant about staying. She has befriended some people here in our town, and that does not sit well with me. It's been a few days since I updated, so I'll begin by confirming whatever I disclosed last time. Nothing I have assumed or believed about Samantha so far has been incorrect. She was indeed a fraud and a schemer in her younger years, and has continued to do the same. However, instead of hiding behind phone calls and emails this time, Samantha and her friends have devised a bigger scheme. It's still going on to be a case of fraud, but on a much larger scale. If my assumptions and observations are correct, then she has aimed to make my dad the center of the fraud like the last time. Which, if you guessed it, would be repeating of the past, but my only dad would have to deal with a situation far worse than before. I'm sure why she's doing this, but I want her to confirm this on her own. I came to a conclusion after I saw her and a few other friends meeting the delinquents of our little town. Though they are not known for the sort of crime Samantha and her friends get involved in, they're still considered a headache in this little community. You could say decent people around town keep their distance from them, and more so, I overheard their conversations. To make sure it could not be denied later, I even recorded whatever I could. I could not understand much of it, but they talked about bringing in more people and delivering the correct items at first before proceeding to the next step. Once they have built up their trust, she would encourage them to invest in a non-existing business opportunity. It hurt my head to understand all that, but I assume she wants to commit investment fraud next. Only this would be on a large scale, and if my assumptions are correct, then this is not the only village. Instead of wasting my time on anything, I immediately informed my parents of what I heard and then shared the record. As expected, they get upset at me for not studying and running around, but then give me a chance to explain my discovery. I definitely missed several points that I discussed with them, but the look on my father's face, I'm sure he came to understand more than I have. While he calls Samantha on the phone in front of me, I sit there like a nervous wreck. She picks up the call a few tries later, and Dad asks if she's free to meet with him. She lies and says that she's out of town and will not return for a few more days. My dad hums in sympathy, and then asks her to meet him when she returns. He tells her this is very important and involves his finances. Well, she sounded so excited next that you could see saliva dripping out of her mouth. She promised to make immediate arrangements for her brother, and that she would do her best to help him get rid of any issues. Right. I rolled my eyes, and Dad hung up and looked at me. I'm sure Samantha should expect some confrontation upon her arrival. I'm unsure what the next few days will look like, but I'll let you know everything the moment I get the time. Although my parents are upset about Samantha's unchanged attitude, they are more upset at me for not focusing on my studies. Dad said he never planned on making it better with Samantha, but he was still grateful that I informed him about it. Maybe, he said, this is how he'll finally teach her a lesson. Samantha needs to be caught, and this may be the one way of doing it. What do you guys think? Is anything about the situation right? Is there something I should have taken care of? Please let me know. I would like to talk to someone about it. Update number 2. It's only been 2 days since my last update, and I expected things to get done quickly, but this one was too quick. I'm so full of nerves, and I'm sure I could burst out with nerves writing this. This is going to be the longest update because so much happened in a single day. I want you to sit down. Samantha arrived earlier than she said she would. She dressed her best, and I could tell, because Dad wanted to talk to her, and my mom and I stayed silent until he returned from work. In the meantime, she tried to involve my mom and Emily in the conversations, and although Mom responded less enthusiastically, Emily was ready to play with her. Annoyed at my little sister's ignorance, I asked if she had finished her homework. My mom, in return, asked if I had done my assignments, and that is how Emily and I spent the next few hours until Dad returned. And we finished our homework and our assignments, and it hurt me that Samantha witnessed that. It was embarrassing, thank you, Mom. I don't know what they talked about, but tensions were high when Dad returned, and by the look on my mother's face, I knew she had probably discussed the past. Have I told you that my mom could act mean if she wanted to? I'm sure she did her job because by the time my dad returned, Samantha looked spooked. No wonder she did not return my dad's dry greeting. Before jumping into any conversation, he asked if she could tell him why she was in the city. Perhaps she met their parents, and she shook her head and replied that she was too ashamed to meet their parents. About her random presence in the city, though, she answered that she was meeting a few school friends, and her explanation was so flat, the entire room turned silent. The only noise you could hear was that of Emily's favorite cartoon character. Perhaps Samantha realized that too, and to dissuade everyone from her random answer, she brought attention to the reason Dad called her. Dad did not play any longer. He asked her about the current occupation that she had, and she answered she was a financial consultant at a small family firm. She neither had the knowledge nor the experience to become one, but my dad let it go. Instead, he asked her further about this said firm, as if she had prepared for these questions beforehand, and she confidently answered each question one by one. Her answers were so confident that you could have believed her if you did not know the truth. Even my dad seemed slightly moved by them for a minute, and I had my phone in my hand. So when Dad asked her the name of the firm, she faltered. She did give a name and then hurriedly explained that we might not find much about it on the internet because it was so new. Even so, I googled it and there was nothing about it except for a website that gave so many major red flags just by the single look of it. Its URL was messy, and my browser immediately warned me I should click out of this, so I closed the tab. Samantha was monitoring my movements and she was definitely scared. We were halfway through. Then, my dad proceeded to ask her why she came here. She had no reason. It's no big city to do your business, and it's the kind of place where you interact with only a few hundred people and move on with your life. You don't come here with your friends and spend months doing nothing. I don't know, maybe she just wanted us to move on with these questions. She gave us a few short answers, but none of them really made any sense, and I wondered if my parents understood. She again asked why my dad called her here. Well, he answered that he just wanted to know what his sister was up to after what happened in the past, and it brought the shame of color to her cheeks. Then, when she had her guard down, he inquired about the new business that she was working on, and it took her aback. I'm sure it was not supposed to be out, and when she opened her mouth to deny such claims, my dad played the recording, and she immediately turned pale. Now that she knew she was trapped in a corner, she went absolutely silent, but I knew her mind was working. She was creating a story in her mind, an excuse to get her out of the situation unharmed. But there was little that she could do. We knew that she was up to something, and we knew she planned to bring some schemes into this town to scam people and frame my dad again. We knew all that, and she was aware that she could not deny any of it. So, as a manipulative person, she tried to justify it. What she said was absurd. It sounded straight out of some badly written fiction novel. She began by recounting how she had, nowhere to go after the confrontation 7 years ago. Several weeks later, she met a man who helped her rebuild herself. He gave her a chance when no one else would have, and slowly she fell in love with him, and they became engaged. However, he soon began revealing his true nature, and he had anger issues, with my aunt Offer being the target. He would physically harm her, followed by apologies, and this pattern persisted for years, and he also struggled with gambling and debts that he could not repay. Unfortunately, Samantha had initially taken financial assistance from him. As the pressure on this man grew, so did the pressure on my aunt. Although she desired to move on from life of fraud, circumstances forced her to continue because she needed to repay him. Otherwise, she claimed that he would kill her. I had heard this story countless times, so I did not react. My dad, however, handed her his phone and asked her to dial his number. Well, that caught her off guard. All the tears she had been shedding abruptly stopped. He persisted, urging her to share his name and number now. Meanwhile, he subtly asked me to call the police, and I knew he had not believed a single word that she had spoken. Dumbfounded at my dad's eagerness, she had little to say, and I had already called the cops and they were on their way. Whatever confession she needed to make, she had to do it quickly, and to provoke her, I started talking about the similarities between her story and the drama I recently finished watching. It brought out something mean in her. My mom, for her part, started talking about another drama. My dad was badgering her about this man's information, and caught on all sides, Samantha screamed and slapped my dad's phone away. She asked him to stop acting like a good brother and own up to what he really was. I don't know where that came from, but that sounded like she did not like it when my dad did not suck it up to her years ago. She felt betrayed, which was weird. Then, after composing herself, she admits there was no man and she had made up a story. She said it was a shame we did not believe it, for it would have made things a lot easier. She then proceeded to dig her own grave. She confessed that she had no personal vendetta against father, but the fact that he cut off ties with her after a single mistake hurt her. His reaction had also hurt the connection between her and their parents. Left with no other option, she felt compelled to continue what she had started, and initially she kept things, quote, simple. but she began devising more elaborate frauds with her friends, and this strategy had helped her for years until recently. The government's awareness campaigns and the vigilante behaviors of the internet and started to hurt her schemes. Consequently, she had to identify a more susceptible target. So, she set her sights on my dad, located him here in this small town, and since he had already been falsely accused about her, she believed it would be effortless to shift the blame onto him once again. Moreover, the village consisted of only a few hundred residents, and most of whom lacked education, providing her with a perfect opportunity to commit fraud. That became her plan. She had already progressed in her scheme until, as she seethed, my dad caught her. Well, it was really me, but whatever. Her willingness to reveal so much was a mistake. Unknown to her, my mom had already recorded her confession, and the cops were still on their way, and now they're on the front porch. The time has come to say goodbye. She screamed at him for deceiving her, and honestly, the audacity was commendable. I answered the door, and my dad smoothly informed them of everything. And for proof, he handed them the recordings. Before they left, my dad asked if her claims of having changed were lies. She answered that they were, and that she hated him for not being a good brother. Annoyed and frustrated at her, I closed the door on her face and said bye-bye. I'll end this now. I have said a lot today. Do you think we did the right thing? Could we have benefited had I shared my suspicions with my parents earlier? Please share your opinions down below. I'm sure we're soon going to get rid of her. I will return soon. Update number 3. Wow. This received a substantial amount of engagement, and I appreciate every sensible comment made to me. No thanks for the nonsensical ones, however. In any case, yes, my aunt was charged. She's facing charges of fraud. We've discovered that her schemes were not limited, though. She carried out her activities in various parts of the state. Catching everyone involved is challenging, and the investigation will continue for months. I've come to realize that not only her friends and her were involved in this scheme, but also several other individuals I've never met. There's a strong likelihood that Samantha has not encountered most of them either. When asked, she repeated the same explanation. She engaged in it because she had been consistently evading consequences. She said she was relieved that she's actually been caught, otherwise she would have persisted for years. At that moment, I knew she had not changed a moment or improved. Besides her, my life is pretty good, though. My parents are doing well, even though my dad seems a little remorseful that he looks less burdened now. Does that make any sense? Maybe he got the closure he's been looking for because the word spreads quickly, and some people have started keeping their distance from us. I'm sure they'll come around. We have to get rid of the actual issue in the family. I have little updates about myself, except that my exams will be coming soon, and I'm preparing for them. In the meantime, I'm doing my best to improve my fellow town's awareness regarding internet fraud. Sure, there will always just be ways that I'm not really familiar with, but we're making progress. Anyways, I will tell everyone to be safe and aware because scammers are everywhere, even in your own family. What's worse is that you may not always have the chance to catch them. Okay, so it was interesting on this story. I was reading a lot of the comments in the comment section from the original post, the updates, and it was very evident on one thing. A lot of people have somebody in their family household who was just like the aunt, even if it wasn't the same type of scheme or ordeal. It was the same type of characteristic, so I want to ask you guys this one specific question. Do you have somebody in your household who could be considered the aunt of this story? If you want to share your story, you can change the name so it's anonymous or however you want to do it. Drop it in the comment section down below. I'll see you guys in the comment section. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every single day of some very dramatic stuff. We're talking inheritance dramas, relationship disputes, all sorts of things from Karen in the Wild stories. I mean, you guys probably want to be a part of this. If you like that sort of thing, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And just remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.